This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Kahn Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey, everybody, it's Dan Kahn with Kahn Media and Only the Strong Survive podcast. Doing something a little different today. This is a solo episode, and just wanted to get caught up. We've been running really hard so far, and as we kind of close out May, and I'm recording this at the very end of May, and June is just a couple days away, and I thought, we're almost 6 months of the way through the year, and I'm coming up on 1 year anniversary of moving to the East Coast and opening the Kahn Media North Carolina office, which is where I'm sitting right now, and you can see it behind me. I thought maybe we'd just do a little bit of a catch up and kind of share what's been going on behind the scenes here, and kind of make this a shorter episode, and hopefully you find it interesting, and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming in the next episode. And we've got a couple of really good interviews teed up, so I think you're going to like them. But here's kind of where we're at. It's been an interesting year. First of all, this is, I think, episode 67. So my kids will get a charge out of that, or tell me I'm cringe, or both. We're 67 episodes into this thing. And what really, it started out as a conversation with leaders, entrepreneurs, marketers, people who really just had a different take on either leading teams of people or building things. And I've always found that interesting. That's partly why I do what I do for a living. I'm in a B2B business. My day job at Kahn Media and Trade Agency is helping other businesses grow and find new customers. And I like seeing I usually have access to the C-suite, and I get to see how people lead. I get to see how companies are built. I get to see how funnels are filled. And I take a lot of mental notes, what works, what doesn't, people I respect, people that I think, wow, I can't believe that actually worked. So I find that personally interesting. And that was why when we decided to do a podcast, I actually did a podcast, and some of you listening know this already, with Rob Kibbe from Muscle Car Place podcast. He and I did one that was also B2B called Cars for a Living. And it was all about how to have a career in the automotive industry. And we did 100 episodes of that. Way back in, I think, like 2010, which was the very beginning of podcasting. Back then, there was no Stitcher, there was no Spotify. You would have to download it off an RSS feed. So we've been doing this in one form or another for a long time. And now, I feel like I've been doing OTSS for a long time. And the fact that we're only 2/3 of the way to that 100 episode mark we did with Cars for a Living is wild to me. But Rob also made that pretty easy. He was a great co-host and a great producer. And I'm very fortunate to have producer Katie on this episode and this show. Couldn't do it without her. So where are we at as we approach June 1st of 2026? Well, there's a lot going on. Like I mentioned earlier, we decided to open an East Coast office last year. This is not something that I took lightly. Back in 2021, when the world kind of shut down, my kids went to Zoom school, which did not work out for my family. So we had to homeschool the kids. And I was going into the Kahn Media office in LA pretty much alone. We had a controller at the time who was going in too. The sheriff got pissed that we were going into our building that we were paying for every month. And I got pretty frustrated and said, well, if I can't go to work and my kids can't go to school, what are we doing here? Let's at least hit the road. So we got in my truck and trailer and my RV, and we started exploring the country and just wanted to see what was out there. And at first it was trips to Arizona, New Mexico. We ended up on BLM land outside of Sedona for 2 weeks, which at that point was the longest we'd ever been off grid. And I liked it. And, at that point, was able to use a Wi-Fi hotspot that didn't work very well. Shortly thereafter, we got a Starlink that worked better. And we just started wandering. Went back to California. Everything was still locked down. Thought, why not go out again? And the next time went out for 6 weeks and went to Texas and Tennessee and started looking around to see kind of what else is out there. I think we did a month in Idaho. We did a full month up in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon and Washington. We did several weeks in North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia. Just trying to figure out, okay, what's this country like, and give my kids that experience. And in doing so, realize, man, there's a lot of smart, creative people out there. And why am I limiting myself to only hiring the ones that live within driving distance of my office? So then we had to figure out, can we manage a team of hybrid and remote employees? And my wife very smartly said, I don't think you should open another office or try to do anything major until you figure out how to do that. So then it was a couple of years of working on myself and working on leadership skills and trying to figure out how to manage creative people remotely, which, as it turns out, is hard. I'm still figuring that out, but I think we've got it sort of sorted by now. Once we got to the point where we felt pretty comfortable with that, then it's like, okay, if our clients are saying, at this point, I'd say only about 20% of our client base is West Coast. So with that other 80%, it would be nice to have teams in Mountain Time and in Eastern Time. And we have quite a few clients now in Asia and in Europe. And how do we have people spread out across 3 or 4 time zones so we can have more teams working more hours of the day? And then it was like, how do we have more specialists? Or instead of just PR and social and creative people, we need strategic marketers. We need brand people. We need more content creators. And how do we open ourselves up to different areas and different geographies and different people with different skill sets? And that's kind of where we landed. So we now have about 32 employees, I think, in 8 or 9 states. And the Eastern Time thing, it really came down to the state of North Carolina. We were very focused on a couple of other states, and they approached us at SEMA show 2 years ago and said, hey, we're going to exhibit at the show. We have an economic development group, and we'd like to talk to you since you're a connector to see if any of your manufacturing clients would be interested in opening a facility in North Carolina. So I took the meeting for them and actually was pretty interested in what they had to say. They flew my wife and I out, had a couple of meetings. They made us some offers to help with relocation and some tax planning and some incentives. And we decided to kind of pursue that and started trying to find a place to land. And we really liked the Charlotte area for a few reasons. I needed to be close to an airport because I travel constantly. And Charlotte does have a good airport. Also, a lot of motorsports and car people here. In fact, UNC Charlotte has a motorsports and marketing program. So that's been really beneficial. We've actually got a couple of team members now that are coming out of the university program here in North Carolina, which is excellent. And then also, it's pretty close to a lot of stuff. So both for business and for personal. I think personal, BMW, Michelin, Continental, General Tire. These are, obviously NASCAR. There's quite a bit of infrastructure within an hour or 2 drive of Charlotte for motorsports and automotive. So that part made sense. And for me personally, having lived my entire life in California, there are certain things I got used to. And I like the fact that we're about 2 hours from the mountains or about 2.5, 3 hours from the beach. We've got some beautiful driving roads. There's a ton of outdoor rec opportunities here. There's some world-class fly fishing, only about 90 minutes from my house. That is a unique thing, I thought, in California, and it turns out it's available here too. So we made the move. I think overall it's been a net positive. I spent a lot more time on airplanes than I used to, but it's been good, and it's been good for my family. I think it's been good for the business. We recently have made several new hires. We have an account coordinator that's here in Charlotte that came out of UNC that has a motorsports background. We just hired a new director of strategy and client relations named Katie Micklet, who has some agency experience in her past and comes entirely from automotive, who seems excellent so far. So I think we're up to 3 team members now in North Carolina, and that's growing. I think it'll be 4 or 5 within the next month or 2. So that's what's going on the personal side, and that's been excellent. On the business side, we've got some really interesting stuff going on. The AI thing has been phenomenal, I think, both for Kahn Media and for our clients. And we offer an AI visibility service that has kept us very busy. We also have a strategic marketing department that builds strategic marketing plans and full competitive assessments, whether it's a company that wants to pivot harder into direct to consumer, or even companies that are just trying to figure out how to take more share, or even companies like we have some private equity owned groups that have come to us to say, hey, it seems like a little bit of the magic is worn off with our consumers because we've had a couple of ownership changes. How do we get it back? And figuring that stuff out. And so those have all been excellent opportunities and real high growth areas for us that we're really excited about. And then we've got some big stuff coming up. And I'm excited. We're working with multiple OEMs now, and I'm really proud to say that we're still AOR with Maserati. We continue to be AOR with Lotus, which is a relationship that spans almost a decade. We've also taken on a lot of work doing PR for Jeep as a brand, which has been phenomenal. They've got an excellent team, and we're continuing to do more stuff with Stellantis, as well as continuing to do quite a bit of work in the aftermarket. I'd say that's still the lion's share of our business. And I'm just so grateful to the aftermarket, the business and the industry that has provided for me and my family my entire life. And I'm really grateful that as marketing and media have continued to evolve over the years, it has just been a constant stream of opportunities. So really excited. And I think the thing that we're seeing right now, and it's something I've been talking about a lot, including in some of these sort of seminars I've been giving around the country to different groups, is this pivot from what we call an attention economy to a filtering economy. And I know that sounds a little buzzwordy, but here's what it means. The attention economy is the one that I grew up in. And if you're listening to this, you probably grew up in. And it started back in the 50s and 60s with radio and newspapers and then magazines. And in the 70s and 80s, it was definitely magazines and TV. Into the 90s, when I kind of came online, it was, if you were a company or a brand and you sold a product or service, if you got that written up in a magazine, or if you're kind of more of a mainstream consumer product, something like Oprah, if you get on TV, you're good. That is the attention economy. You win. You got on the cover of a magazine. You got on a major TV show. I remember earlier in my career when I worked for another agency, I handled the Airstream account. And I think the biggest hit I'd ever gotten up to that point was for the first time we got Airstream on the cover of the Sunday edition of the LA Times, like the cover, not like the travel section or the lifestyle section. And it was all about like how Airstream had come into its own. A hit like that at that moment would transform an entire company. And that was how the attention economy worked. And that really flowed very smoothly into first Web 1 and then Web 2 with the internet and then social media, where again, if you're loud, if you're getting attention, if you're doing something really interesting, you're going to get more attention than your competitor. You're going to get the attention of your consumer. You're going to sell more product or more services. You win. That hasn't changed much. The modality has changed. The delivery mechanism has changed. It's not necessarily about magazines or the radio anymore. Now it's about podcasts and TikTok and Instagram and Reels and video content. But, you get attention, you get more sales. That's always been the business model. People have become so overwhelmed with just the nonstop assault of information and content on their senses that they're starting to kind of shut down. And think about it in your own life. Doom scrolling has become something that most people don't even want to do anymore. It's become this like weird addict behavior where you find yourself with 10 minutes to spare in line at a drive-in or, a drive-through restaurant, or you're standing in line waiting to take your turn at Starbucks or whatever. What do? You almost like automatically, like a junkie, take your phone out of your pocket and you're just scrolling, whether it's Apple News or a social feed or LinkedIn, email, whatever. We've become completely overwhelmed with content. And what that means now is people are now relying on third parties to sort and prioritize that content for them. That could be an algorithm on a social platform. It could be AI in your Gmail helping you organize sort of the spam from the emails you're getting directly from maybe your coworkers. It could be even something like AI. And those filters are helping people sort of assess what information they want versus the stuff that they don't want. How does a business operate in a filtering economy versus an attention economy? In an attention economy, you just have to be louder than the other people. You have to be wilder. You have to do something more interesting. You have to be more authentic. It's not the same recipe. I've written on LinkedIn quite a bit about brands like Liquid Death. Their strategy for tackling the attention economy is just be louder, be more daring, be crazier, do weird stuff, hire Travis Barker from Blink-182 to lay naked on a bearskin rug and talk about enemas. That is something they really did. Are they actually selling seltzer water for enemas? No, not really. They're just trying to get attention, and they got it, and they won. And their shelf space continues to increase at stores around the country. That's becoming harder to do, and it's becoming less effective, and not because the stunts are any less funny or interesting. By the way, it doesn't have to be a stunt. In the old attention economy, you could just make a great car. I mean, for years and years, car of the year in the automotive space was a big deal, whether it was Car and Driver, Motor Trend, whatever. All the OEMs wanted that. They wanted the trophy that they could put in the, magazine ad and a TV commercial, because that's how they got attention. Hey, it's third-party endorsement. This magazine said we're better than all the other cars. Again, that's getting harder and harder to call a win, because who is actually seeing that information? The reality is now most people are just going to, if they're not a car person necessarily, but a regular consumer says, hey, I need to buy a pickup truck. I occasionally go fishing on the weekend. I want to take my mountain bike to the trail. I'm not doing anything particularly heavy duty. Most of the time it's my daily driver. I'm driving to work. I'm driving to the supermarket. So I need a truck. What should I get? They're probably not picking up a magazine. They may or may not be looking at a car site. Maybe they're watching reviews on YouTube. More and more often, they're just typing in best mid-size pickup truck and looking for the results. Are they typing it into ChatGPT, into Gemini, into Grok, into Perplexity? Maybe they're just typing it into the browser window on their phone. And the change here is now, today, if they type it into the browser window on their phone, a significant number of people are just looking at that little italic slug of information at the top, which if you're on an Android or an iPhone, which the vast majority of humans on Earth are using, that is a Gemini response. That is AI. And it is culling that data from information it has scraped off the internet, and it's giving you a succinct answer. That is the filtering economy. And if that impacts your purchase decision, if you were thinking about going and buying an F-150 and the AI says you should really consider a Ford Maverick or a Honda Ridgeline, and you had never considered a Honda Ridgeline before, and you drive over to the Honda dealer and you walk in and you look at a Ridgeline, that's because the filter, the AI, gave you a piece of information you hadn't considered before. Not because of an article you sought out and read, not because of a YouTube video that just sort of wildly popped up on a website, because you went looking for information and an algorithm or an AI LLM delivered it to you to help streamline your information gathering. That's what's happening in real time right now. And it's one of the biggest shifts in consumer behavior that's happened in the last century. And we don't even really know when that sort of transition will have completed, because we're still certainly living in this transitionary phase right now. The attention economy does still function. The filtering economy is still coming online. The number of people adopting AI for decision-making is doubling about every 6 months. And at this point, I think the most recent study I read this morning said over 1 billion people on Earth now have used AI in the last, month in one way or another, mostly because they can use it for free or at minimal cost on their phone. So the adoption rate is the highest adoption rate of a new technology and the fastest adoption rate of new technology in human history. Nothing before has ever come online this quickly, whether it's the computer, the automobile, anything, electricity, nothing has been adopted this quickly. And so it is going to have profound impacts. So as a marketer, as a business leader, what does that mean? Well, it means we're in this gray area right now where, and I talked about in my book, New Rules of the Road, How to Navigate a Rapidly Changing Marketing Landscape. I talked about the Belle Epoque era, which was in the late 1800s, early 1900s in the major cities, New York, London, Paris, in the West. Up until that moment, the cities had a feces problem, where the primary mode of transportation in cities was horses and horse-drawn carriages. When you have hundreds of thousands of horses in a city like New York or Paris, those horses are biological beings. They have needs, and they're not stopping to go to a restroom. So it was a real issue. They had to have whole armies of people out to clean the streets. There were disease issues as a result of those things. There were secondary issues like rats as a result of those problems. All of a sudden, the car is invented. And at first, only very wealthy people could afford cars. So you'd buy an automobile that could maybe go 25, 30, 35 miles an hour. You're trying to drive it through the streets of Paris or New York or London, and it's loud and it's banging and it's maybe steam powered, maybe gasoline powered. It would spook the horses. So then the cities passed laws called red flag or red light laws, where you'd have to hire a person to walk in front of your car waving a red flag to warn the people who were riding horses or driving carriages so their horses wouldn't get spooked. So now you spent all this money to buy this very advanced piece of technology that can go 25 or 30 miles an hour, but you're only going 4 miles an hour because that's as fast as the guy in front of you could walk holding the flag. That's where we are today, right now. But it's changing, because that was happening around 1895 to about 1910. There was about a 15-year period. By 1910, 1915, there's almost no horses left in those cities. It's almost all automobiles. The red flag laws are gone. People are going 25 miles an hour. Efficiency increases. Now there's secondary problems. Now they have smog. Now they need gas stations. Now they need service stations who can oil your motor, who can help you change a tire. Those didn't exist. If you're a saddle maker, you're probably having a tough time. By 1925, the only people riding horses in New York City were the NYPD and a couple of carriages in Central Park. That's it. Horses are gone. We're talking about in a 30-year period after hundreds of years of kind of the same. The streets are clean. There's no more feces issues. Those crews that were hired don't have to clean that up anymore. But now they're cleaning up other issues. They're cleaning up oil spills. They're trying to figure out other stuff. So that is the societal shift that we're living in right now. And as we adopt this new technology, it's going to have some lumps and there's going to be some challenges. But just like everything else, if you were the first service station in New York or Paris or London to offer fuel and tires and service to automobiles, you're going to do really well. If you're the last saddle maker in New York, you're probably having a tough time. And this is sort of what we've been dealing with for the last year at Kahn Media, at Tread, as an industry. We've had conversations with big organizations like SEMA about this kind of stuff, is how do you future-proof an industry? And how do you help all these entrepreneurs and leaders and business owners that I talked about at the beginning of this episode that I love talking to? I love talking to people who build things. That's my favorite thing. How do you help them? And that's been sort of what we've been dealing with on the day job side of the business. And it's also why you've heard a lot of these types of conversations on this show, because we're trying to figure it out too. And we've got some really great episodes coming up to talk about that exact thing, is how do you future-proof your business? How do you figure out how to stand out in a world where algorithms and LLMs are making a lot of decisions for you? Well, one of the ways you do it is through authenticity, through brand. And it's funny because in the beginning of my career, I used to kind of make fun of branding people. I would sit in meetings with clients and they'd bring in some branding guy who'd use big words and do the whole hype thing. And if you ever see like Don Draper in the first couple seasons of Mad Men doing this whole like pitch, that's kind of how a lot of those branding conversations went. So I used to think it was kind of voodoo. I was so wrong. And obviously now we've been doing brand work for over a decade and it's something that we actually really believe in. But to me, what branding is not a logo. That's what I used to think. It's not a logo. Your brand is who you are. It's what you stand for. It's your values. And it's what it says about a person or a customer when they say they bought your product. What are they aligning themselves with? You know, there's lots and lots and lots of companies that sell toilet paper. It's all kind of the same. You can get it from Ralph's. You can get it from Costco. You can get it on Amazon. Toothpaste, you know, it's all kind of a commodity. Doesn't say much about you. And you're not really bragging about it. You're not taking a selfie with your toothpaste. I love Crest. This is why I buy Crest. Now, the exception to that might be like the real kind of crunchy granola, like organic stuff. There's probably more affinity for those types of brands because they have a value system and you're saying something about yourself. So speaking of commoditized products, let's talk about something that pretty much everybody has in their pantry, which is baking flour. I mean, I actually will admit I like to bake. It's something I enjoy doing in my off hours. And, I think there's tons and tons of brands out there. Flour all kind of looks the same. It feels the same, but it's not all the same, right? So there's a company out there called Bob's Red Mill. It was founded by a guy named Bob. He started it later in life. It was an idea that he had a mill. And he said, hey, what if we made organic products and we made them kind of simple and didn't put a bunch of additives and products in them? He, I think, grew that brand locally and then regionally and then eventually became an ESOP. He actually sold the business to his employees. The employees still own it. Unfortunately, I think he's in the label. There's a picture of Bob wearing like a red hat in the label. And he passed away, I think, fairly recently in the last year or two. And the company did a rebrand. And unlike a lot of these sort of botched rebrands we hear about lately, They did one that felt real. It felt authentic. They kept Bob in the picture. They actually made a little GIF that they put out on social, kind of showing what the old brand was and what the new one was, and then wrote a really thoughtful, introspective post that was really transparent and really true to their values about, hey, we felt like it was time to do a little bit of an update. We're updating our packaging. We're still an ESOP. We're still employee owned. We're still devoted to the same sort of kind of moral compass and values that built the company into what it is. We're not going to suddenly start adding a bunch of chemicals and additives to our product. You can rely on us. We did just want to update our packaging and hope we like you. We hope you like it. To me, that's true. It's authentic, and that serves the needs of both kind of aligning with the values of your customer and also aligning with this new filtered economy where, if anything, they got some positive coverage in some different media that will end up getting indexed by the LLMs, and if anything, it'll probably help them with AI visibility as well as traditional search. And I don't think it'll alienate anybody. An example of maybe another one that could have gone a little better would be in the car world. Jaguar and more recently Ferrari both had some missteps where, Jag went through, after decades and decades of maybe not exactly record-setting sales, they were certainly well known for being a luxury brand and a well-respected brand and not owned by many, but beloved by a few. And I think the people who were Jaguar customers were repeat customers. And they did this sort of modernization rebrand where they tried to make their logo different, but they also scrapped their whole product line. And they announced this new product with a concept car that kind of looked like a perfume box. Like it didn't even look like a luxury car. And they were derided. They got so much negative press and so much negative chatter on social. And again, it's a filtered economy now. So you're either going to break out because you did something great or not great. And in the case of Jag, I think that the algorithm saw that those posts were getting a lot of engagement because mostly people throwing shade at the brand, and it just amplified them. And all of a sudden, for days and days in a 24-hour news cycle, it was like 3 days of heat. And then after that, their whole brand value kind of plummeted. More recently, Ferrari just went through something similar, a brand that has generally been considered the most valuable brand on earth for decades. Unbelievably obsessive levels of brand protectionism by the stakeholders of Ferrari. Famously, if you're a Ferrari customer and you modify your car, especially if you're a public persona, you get put on a banned list. You're not allowed to modify your car. You can't flip their cars. They're famously obsessive about protecting their brand. And all of a sudden, they launched their first 5-seat vehicle. It's their first SUV, and it's their first electric car. And it's the Luce or Luce, I don't know how to pronounce it. They brought in Johnny Ive, who used to be the head of design under Steve Jobs at Apple, to design it. And it looks like an Apple product. Not to say it's bad. It's not offensive to me anyway, but it doesn't look like a Ferrari. It looks like as if Apple built a car. And they also priced it at $650,000. I think if they had come out with a interesting, cool looking vehicle, regardless of the powertrain, electric or gas, I think it probably would have had some people throw shade. I mean, honestly, when Porsche came out with the Cayenne, their first SUV, the Porsche community hated it. It ended up being the best-selling vehicle in the history of the company, and it saved the company. They made so much money selling SUVs, it allowed them to do all sorts of other really cool, really interesting stuff in the sports car world. That's not what happened here. The Ferrari loyalists are sort of insulted and infuriated by the fact that it doesn't look like a Ferrari. The general kind of casual enthusiast doesn't understand a $650,000 electric car. They just sort of managed to kind of alienate everybody. And again, the algorithms saw the hate and saw it got huge amounts of engagement and amplified it. So it's going to pump you up if you're doing something really great, and it's going to pump you up if you're doing something really wrong, and the rest of us all get ignored. So that is this transitional ecosystem that we live in right now, and learning how to navigate that as a marketer, as a business leader is really interesting, and it's really challenging. It's something that we're working really hard on every day. We're helping big brands that are parts of kind of roll-ups, resuscitate brands that have maybe been sort of left to the wayside a little bit. We've been launching some new startups that are really exciting, and I can't wait to talk about those, including an OEM. That's really cool. But we're also just helping run-of-the-mill aftermarket brands and outdoor recreation brands just learn how to operate in this ecosystem, selling everyday products that people need and people want. And how do you stay loyal and true to the values that brought you to the customer in the first place, while also being visible enough that you can break through that filtered economy and get the LLMs and the algorithms to recommend you. That's the challenge. And it's an interesting one. And I think, a funny example that we had nothing to do with, but I observed it and thought it was fascinating was, I'll share it with you. Close your eyes and tell me if you can visualize the face of the CEO of, say, Wendy's or Subway or Taco Bell. That's Yum Brands. I'm guessing you probably have no idea what the CEO of those companies look like. Now see if you can visualize the face of the CEO of McDonald's. I'm guessing that for a significant number of you out there, you know exactly what he looks like, and you probably didn't a few months ago. That's because the CEO of McDonald's, who's a kind of a regular looking middle-aged dude, looks like a business guy, in a collared shirt sitting in a generic kind of office. He has been making these LinkedIn videos for a couple of years now, and the view count on them is very low. I mean, he's got stuff like, here's how we use AI in McDonald's headquarters. Here's the kind of stuff I like to do in my off hours. Here's, what I look for when I'm hiring new VPs. I mean, it's all kind of normal corporate, boring, not interesting at all. Until he recorded a video, or his team helped him record a video of himself trying their latest burger, or as he called it, their latest product called the McArch. And it's a big burger, and it's kind of like a double quarter pounder of cheese thing. And they took a video of him eating it, and it was an admittedly awkward, weird video. He took this very tepid little nibble. That's not how people eat hamburgers. He had some food on his face. So it was kind of weird. And then the whole time he kept referring to it as product. That's good product. Nobody talks like that. So he came across like a lizard person. And like it was bizarre, and it got viral, but not on his page. That is the interesting part, is that video didn't do all that much better or worse than any other video this guy's ever done, until a TikToker saw it, screen recorded it, and posted a reaction video to it. And her video went to 26 million views or something like that within a couple of days. And then more people started recording reaction videos. That's the filtering economy, right? So the algo sees people engaging with this piece of content and says, oh, people think this is interesting or funny or weird. We're going to amplify it. And especially on TikTok, that particular platform is really good at that. So all of a sudden, now he's on Instagram. He's on Twitter. Or X, he's on TikTok. He's all over the place. His video never actually goes all that viral. It's all the reaction videos that do. And then again, all in the same 24-hour cycle, it starts to take off. All the other fast food companies start posting their own videos. And suddenly the CEO of Burger King, the CEO of Wendy's, all these other burger chains, big and small, are posting videos of their CEOs eating burgers, taking giant bites and talking about how they're great and explaining them. It created a moment. So now this could be like the Ferrari story, right? This could be the black eye of hey, we screwed up at McDonald's here. We really biffed this one. Here's what they did that was genius. Within a day or two, they had billboards and online ads up and running, showing the McArch with 2 words as the caption: great product. They made fun of themselves. They owned it. They saw that they had a breakout moment. It wasn't ideal. I'm sure the CEO was very unhappy for a couple of days there. He was kind of the butt of a joke across the whole internet. But instead of just going and crying about it, they leaned into it. They owned it. That's the authenticity part. That was the part where they took a potential loss that broke out through the filtering economy, stayed true to their values, kept it lighthearted, kept it fun, owned it, and had a good product launch. So you can even turn the hard stuff into good stuff if you're willing to understand how this sort of transitory ecosystem we're living in actually works. So I am just so excited about what's happening right now in the marketing world, in business. I think it's a really interesting time. It feels like we're having to write a whole new business plan every month or two. And for someone like me that likes thinking about this kind of stuff, that's really exciting. So we're having good things happening at Kahn Media. We've got some great guests lined up at OTSS. We're having some really interesting conversations. I've been on the road quite a bit. As I record this, I'm getting ready to go to Minnesota to give a keynote speech to the Professional Outdoor Media Association. Later in the year, if you are interested, I'm going to be a featured speaker at the SEMA show talking about this stuff. I think we're also going to probably get a slot at the SHOT Show in January in Las Vegas. So stay tuned on that one. And again, enjoy the show. Enjoy OTSS. Thank you for listening. Thank you for 67 great episodes. My kids will make a 6-7 joke right now. I'll see you guys on the road.